Let me first of all start with welcome you all to our SAP Live Salon. Wouldn't we all like a vision of the future, a little peek into what tomorrow brings, or next year, or maybe even next decade? Well, I have good news. The next hour we have lined up 6 people who already live in what they think of as the future. Let me take you to an inspiring journey into the ideas and technologies of tomorrow. But first of all, let me introduce you to our VP and Global Innovation Evangelist, Timo Elliott. Where is he, Timo? Timo Elliott, here he is, who will join me, give him an applause. Who will join me later on stage. And Timo, you will take notes, you will zoom in on the key aspects everybody here should take home today. And I'm coming back to you after our table talk. And next up, I will introduce you to our band, Stereo Bumper. Welcome. Stereo Bumper. Good, and who will join me here on this huge table? Well, first of all, Head of Digital at Solar Impulse, Vincent Colgrave. Also, Global VP, Futurist and Innovation Evangelist at SAP, Tom Raftery. And last of all, Theoretical Physicist and Aspiring Extraterrestrial, Dr. Adriana Marais. Please clap your hands for them. Welcome. Good. Let me start with Mr. Colgrave, Head of Digital at Solar Impulse. But maybe for all the people here, can you explain us what is Solar Impulse?
Yes, for sure. So Solar Impulse was a project that was initiated in 1999 by Bertrand Piccard, and we accomplished the first round the world with a solar plane, flying day and night, between 2015 and 2016. Okay.
It's a kind of solar airplane. It took 13 years to get there.
Yes.
So you had a big idea, or the company had a big idea. In a way, it's also a short time frame to come to Solar Impulse, to such a great thing.
Well, it's a short time frame, yes, but it was long hours and a lot of energy, I can tell you that. But yes, the industry was not ready. So basically, at first, our two co-founders, Bertrand Piccard and André Borschberg, went and had to pitch it to a lot of different players who were not ready to support. And so the only goal to do it was to raise the team, find the partners, and make it happen. So we had to do a lot of tests, and failures. Mm-hmm. And then we reached the point where we were really able to attend this round the world. So yes, it was fast if you look a bit from distance, but concretely speaking, we had to go through a lot of...
Is it fast, Tom?
Yes and no. I mean, the fact that you guys had to go from a standing start to develop a fully solar-powered plane, and you did it in 13 years, is really incredible. To have a plane that's able to fly day and night, solar-powered, it's an incredible achievement. And to then get that plane to circumnavigate the globe, that's amazing. I mean, when you guys started out and you were telling people that you wanted to do this, I'm sure 99% of the people thought you were crazy, that no one could fly a plane that's solely solar-powered.
Yes, definitely. And people did not understand why the hell we were joining that project and why did we want to invest time and energy and passion into it. But when we did the round the world, everyone was like, yes, you're sure, it's logical. But it was not at all at the beginning.
And the goal was flying around the world. That happened. What's the next goal?
There are 2 projects ongoing. One is a foundation, that is Foundation Solar Impulse, that is connecting a lot of startups, trying to create clean technologies with the right players in the world, so trying to be a middleman and facilitating the capacities of innovation through all the contacts we created flying around the world. Mm-hmm. And the second one is a startup initiated by the other co-founder, André Borschberg, H55, developing an electric airplane, and they are in the backstage working hard on it.
Okay, can we also expect a solar-powered commercial passengers airplanes flying around at any time? Is that something that we expect soon, or is it really, does it take a couple of years or longer?
Well, I think you can read a lot of things now, like a lot of players are starting to invest into that field. In short haul, short flats, yes, there are capacities. So we can expect that in a few years, but definitely that project was a game changer and proved that it was possible. And it's only when you do that first step, then you're able to deploy in industry to raise the funds and everything that is needed to go global.
I think the issue with solar-powered flight is that the fuselage doesn't have enough surface area to carry enough people for it to actually create a plane that can carry passengers and fly any distance, really. But one of the cool things that this project demonstrated is electric flight is possible. So sure, we can get solar-powered planes, but the solar power will generate the electricity somewhere else and put it into batteries that can then fly the planes. So electrical flight is incredibly feasible, and there are lots of people working on that right now. Solar-powered planes, not with the solar panels on the fuselage. There isn't enough area.
Yeah. Maybe a reaction from you?
Yeah, I mean, solar. So for me, it always comes back to resources. And yes, the universe is full of atoms and molecules of all types. However, while we're stuck on one planet, namely Earth, we have to deal with the reality that we have finite resources, and management of resources is then crucial. However, when we look at what resources constantly coming in, sunlight. And we're not the first living systems to have discovered this truth that sunlight keeps shining. Photosynthetic organisms are amongst the first organisms to have emerged on Earth. The fossil record shows that as long ago as 4 billion years, the first bacteria learned to use sunlight to power the processes that made them live. And I think this eventual 4 billion years later, humans are starting to catch on.
To use it in that way. Mr. F3, you are a futurist. Does it surprise you that we are already at this level of in aviation?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't surprise me because I've been watching it progress. I think we've seen incredible progress in electrical flight in the last 5 years. We've seen Airbus are now getting into it, and they've started to create electric planes, so Boeing. But so there's a load of startups as well, and that's where most of the innovation comes from. We see people like Lilium out of Germany. We see people like Volocopter. Lilium is invested in by, I think it's Index. They have Mark Andreessen on their board. Volocopter heavily invested in by Intel. There's the Chinese company Ehang. Bell Helicopters are getting into it now as well. They demonstrated a kind of drone concept plane at CES this year. It's a hybrid. Airbus is getting into it. They have their Vahana system. So everyone is getting into it now because they know we've got, as Adriana rightly said, we've got resource constraint issues. We need to get into powering our vehicles by electrons instead of molecules.
Yeah. So you're not surprised. But it's a big idea to create things like that, an idea that truly change the way we do things. For such a big idea, do you always need to have a big company?
No, and that's what I was getting at with talking about Solar Impulse and the startups. Very often...
It is a startup, or you started with a small...
We started
with
small.
how many people?
When I joined it, we were like a team of 30 people. And we had a lot of issues of funding, so we did not have like a long-term vision. We had the idea, but we had no clue how we were going to make it until the time we could do it around the world. So it was learning failures.
Okay.
Very often it's the smaller companies and it's the people. And very often in larger companies, you get people saying, no, you could never do that. No, that can't happen. Or we don't have the processes to do that. Whereas in small companies, people can just say, screw the process, we'll just do it. And that's how you get innovation happening.
This is about aviation. I said already you are a futurist. And I've heard you say that the various industry leaders that we know today might not be on top in 5 or 10 years anymore. What are the top fields of industry of tomorrow?
Ooh, that's a good question, and it's a hard one to answer, but I think if we look at where disruption is happening today,
Yes.
we're seeing massive amounts of disruption happening in healthcare. Healthcare is moving from, a lot of times, diagnoses based on intuition to now diagnoses being based on data. We're seeing enormous amounts of disruption happening in the energy space with the rise of renewables and the shift to storage. We're seeing huge amounts of disruption happening in transportation because we're going from vehicles powered by molecules to vehicles powered by electrons. We've seen the rise of autonomous vehicles as well, and the shift to connected vehicles. In agriculture, we're seeing a rise of massive indoor vertical farms. So we're producing food either from stem cells or from plant proteins. So, you know, we're reducing, or we will reduce, because we haven't gotten there yet, but in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll produce more of our food from plant sources, be it meat or be it plants, than we will from slaughtering animals, which is a very inefficient way of getting protein.
Energy, transportation, food, maybe a reaction, energy, that's also important, I think, for you.
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of fields. I'm currently now working at Solvay, and we're investing a lot of different areas and trying to support on a long-term capacity all those breakthrough technologies. But yes, there are a lot of stakes.
Okay. Which startup or new ideas today gets you excited these days?
Well, right now I'm very excited about the energy and transportation spaces because they're coming together. The shift to renewables and storage in energy matches very closely with the electrification of transportation. And we're now seeing things like companies like Volkswagen, who have reputational issues, shall we say, are going hell for leather to get over that by going all out for electrification of transportation. Volkswagen have said that they will have 70 distinct models of vehicle electrified by 2025, and they want to be selling 1 million electric vehicles a year by 2025.
Wow, that's huge.
They've invested 50 billion euro in securing the supply chain for the batteries they know they're going to need, because the biggest issue for car manufacturers right now is access to batteries.
Okay.
So
yeah, that are amazing. That's amazing. Miss Adriana Marais, when it's up to you, we are leaving for Mars tomorrow, or is that too optimistic?
Well, not quite tomorrow. I think I haven't packed yet, but in our lifetime, sure. I think, and the reasons for leaving Mars are very diverse. But going back to the living in a resource-constrained environment, for me, the ultimate challenge would be to demonstrate livability on the surface of Mars, on the surface of the Moon, because I think if we can demonstrate that, it will result in a perspective shift that we are in desperate need of here on Earth. So to think about sort of cutting-edge technologies, you might have heard of these: the mobile phone, the internet, the personal computer. These technologies, research shows, all emerged out of the inspiration of the Apollo era. So the students who were either in high school or doing undergrad at the time in the 60s and 70s, when we saw humans walking on the moon, impossible feat achieved through science and technology, a spike per capita in the number of people studying these types of fields increased as unprecedented and never since achieved. And this same cohort of students went on to commercialize the personal computer, the mobile phone, and the internet. Yes. And if you think about it, what new technological developments have actually happened since then? A 10-year-old pointed out that CRISPR, the gene editing technique, is one such technology. You always have to ask a 10-year-old to get the real answer. But besides that, all we've done is miniaturize and optimize. We're essentially playing with the same building blocks that were created out of the impossible being achieved in the 60s and 70s. So I believe getting to Mars is going to herald the next wave of technologies that are necessary for our sustained existence.
And it will take a long time, or it's not for tomorrow, but can you...
Well, SpaceX are the people to watch. Again, company that started small, proved NASA wrong numerous times. I mean, the NASA shuttle manager said it would be impossible to re-land the boosters just like 6 months before SpaceX actually did that. Yes. Now we see NASA and SpaceX partnering to launch crew from the US for the first time in 10 years. Okay. So I might, as a South African, add it's taken a South African to move to the US to reinstate crewed launch capability. Okay. So SpaceX is planning to land cargo on the surface of Mars in 2025. 2022.
2022.
That's the date to watch, because if that's successful, then crewed missions will happen in the 2020s.
Okay, yes.
Can I ask a question, Adriana? You said in an offhand comment that you hadn't packed your bags yet for going to Mars. But I'm just curious, if you were going to Mars, or when you go to Mars, what will you bring with you? What do you bring on a trip to Mars?
3D printers.
That makes
And
sense.
data and processes. Yeah, so I think personal possessions are quite irrelevant. If you just bring a critical mass of 3D printers, you can even print another 3D printers.
Okay, good.
Seeds,
Yeah.
seeds. Seeds is
Seeds.
one thing you cannot 3D print. You might want to remember to bring the seeds for the agriculture.
And potatoes. I saw the movie. Loads of potatoes.
And maybe some Irish people to help us with the potato.
Okay, we will talk about the technology in a few minutes, but you are a quantum physicist?
By training. Yeah.
Yes, which means that you work with elements that are impossibly small. Does the key to big doors like space travel and sustainability is in the smallest of the smallest?
So I liked what Tom said about powering not by molecules but by electrons, which means obviously we're getting to smaller building blocks to enable the same processes, which means we're becoming more efficient. And using solar energy is perhaps the end point of that, using photons, to power your various processes. So manipulating the smallest building blocks of reality is the ultimate in precision. But I think besides using, quantum techniques to achieve different, medical diagnosis or so on, yes, that can be possible. But I think more important is to look at what technology we already have and in parallel do research. But look at what we have, because I believe the integration of technologies coupled with big thinking is exactly the recipe that we need right now, because we don't have maybe 30 years to develop new quantum techniques to do things. What we need to do is start to work now with what is available now.
Yeah, okay, so we have, you agree, Vincent?
Yeah, I fully agree, and I think this is what we proved with Solar Imports. It was existing technologies, and the plane we flew around the world was 2012 technologies, and we're able to accomplish something that everyone thought that was impossible.
Yeah.
So to me, it's a strong message to say there are already things that exist right now that are useful and that we should deploy much more into the way we work, we live, everything.
Okay, maybe a little bit to repeat. We are developing technologies, we are applying them that are needed to go to Mars. Can you give some examples? Which technologies and maybe which are used already today, also here?
So for me, if you saw the slide that I showed in my presentation this morning of my high school science project, as my mum said, nothing has changed for me since 1997, because the topics on my school project were power, water, food, and then, of course, communication systems, information transfer, etc. And we have to admit, we have not solved these most basic issues on Earth. I believe going to space in parallel to having a massive drive to improve these, the management of these resources on Earth. In parallel, I think this needs to be done. But basically, power. We need to go renewable. We all know that, but the process is slow. Water. Increasingly access to fresh water is a challenge for many communities. Coming from Cape Town, many political mismanagement coupled with climate change, etc., is resulting in some cities having problems with water access, clean water, food, as Thomas talked about, indoor food agricultural systems, so kind of vertical farming uses 95% less water. We need to be building these in urban areas.
I see you lost your microphone, yeah. Maybe that's... maybe somebody can help her, because otherwise it will be difficult for the people... Yeah, else will come and she will help you. So lots of technologies. Maybe.
I'll step in because Adriana was speaking to a point that I mentioned in my talk about agriculture and food production. And you're back.
She's back, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the kind of systems that we'll need to survive on Mars are going to be renewably powered wastewater management, renewably powered indoor farming systems. And guess what? This is exactly the kind of direction that we need to go, whatever planet we're on. So sometimes I think, desperately imagining what the future will hold, what kind of business model we need to be agile and sustainable for the next 200 years. Well, guess what? If you're working in power, water, food, nothing's going to change in that respect. Humans are still going to need to breathe, to drink, and to have power to power our technologies. So I think
so these technologies that they are developing for the road to Mars are also good for the Earth right now. It's
Correct, yeah, because
Yeah.
as Adriana said, if you're producing food in an indoor vertical farm, you're using 95% less water, 99% less land. So if you use that land, it's much more efficient use of resources. Also, food produced this way has no herbicides or pesticides associated with it, and what's called the food miles associated with that. If you can build these vertical farms in the middle of a city, so therefore the food miles associated with that food comes down to food meters rather than food miles. And if you then develop food that only has to travel a kilometer or 2 kilometers at most, then you don't have to optimize for shelf life any longer. You can instead optimize for things like taste or nutrition, maybe. Wouldn't that be interesting?
okay. I can imagine that it sounds very good for lots of companies. There are a kind of business opportunities, I think, for companies.
Huge, huge,
yes.
yeah. I mean, with all this disruption, and disruption only comes, as we said earlier, from small startups anyway, in many, many, many cases. There are exceptions, obviously. But obviously, lots of startups are coming into this space. People like Beyond Meat, who had their IPO last month, and the price shot up. Impossible Foods, who are also in this space, they raised another $300 million a couple of weeks ago to give them a now valuation of $2 billion. They're creating burgers from plant protein, but it's burgers that look and taste exactly like beef burgers. They've got the consistency, they've got the taste, they've got even kind of blood oozing out of them when you bite into them, but no meat, no animals slaughtered.
Yeah, so companies are already making a profit of the Mars travel.
And Impossible Foods have done a partnership with Burger King. So now, if you go to Burger King, select Burger King outlets in the US, you can ask for an Impossible Burger. That's what it's called. Impossible Whopper, I think is what it is, because it's Burger King. So it's an Impossible Whopper, and you get that plant-made burger.
Okay. Something else, climate change. We are all talking about it today. Should we hold our efforts to save this planet instead of going to Mars? Yeah, it's a huge question, I know.
See, people always separate these two as though only one is possible.
Yeah, it's not a zero-sum game.
We should do all planets in the solar system, in my opinion. Earth is always going to be the easiest place to live. We've evolved here. We can breathe the air. We can drink the water. Plants grow by themselves. There will never be a time in history, I think, unless when the sun goes red giant and envelops the Earth, when there will be a more pleasant planet to live. So yes, we need to fix the challenges that we've created through our technology here on Earth, using that technology. Going to Mars is by no means an escape. It's not going to be an easy task to live on the surface of Mars. It's not going to be somewhere where people go and relax, let's say. It's going to be tough, and the reason we're going is because it's going to be tough, because the lessons that we learn from living in such a harsh environment will teach us, give us invaluable knowledge about how to live in a more resource and manage our resources better on Earth, let's say.
Okay, Tom, what do you think?
Adriana's right. It's not a zero-sum game. We can do both, and we should do both, because we will learn a huge amount from the mission to Mars. And yes, we do have to solve climate change here on Earth. We are doing a lot to do that, but we need to do so much more. We need to generate our power using renewable sources and use storage and get rid completely of oil and gas. We need to shift everything to working from electricity. So transportation, everything, heating, cooling, everything needs to go from electricity, and that electricity needs to be renewably sourced. And yeah, we're getting there, but we need to go faster. We need governments to step in and make commitments to go zero carbon footprint by, some are doing it by 2050, that's nowhere near soon enough. I saw Helsinki say that they're going to do it by 2035. And I think that's the most ambitious goal I've seen set yet.
Vincent?
Yes, I'm just going to answer your comments. Definitely we can apply a lot of things today in our planet. And to me, disruption, as you name it, to me is transposition. So we need to go and look what others have been doing and see if there is a pattern we can apply in other logics. And at Solar Impulse, if you look at all the partners we had no company that are building airplanes. We went and we are partnered with Solvay, we partnered with ABB, with Omega, companies that have nothing to do, but that they brought their know-how, their technologies, and they wish to change. And I'm just going to give one figure, like the energy efficiency of the engines we used was 97%. And that's the only reason why we're able to fly day and night. If you take like all the cars that are here, like we all came with those mostly today, the energy efficiency is 33%. And you see the gap, so it means that all the amount of oil we put into our cars, like most of it is disappearing, it becomes heat. So there is a lot of things that we could apply today that would have like a huge, huge impact, and I really believe in that.
Yeah.
Okay. Adriana, you look ahead pretty far in the future. How far do we need to look?
Tough question. So I think we need to have a vision of the future, and I think that's what leadership is.
And that's not about 5 years, it's about much longer.
I think it's a vision of where we want to be. How long it takes to get there is something you learn along the journey. But having a vision of the future, that's crucial to being able to lead, and we're all leaders in some sense.
What are the benefits to look so far?
So for me, I mean, it's a better resource management that enables a higher quality of life. I come from South Africa, where the inequality is the highest in the world. Our country annually kind of keeps winning this award of the Gini index basically being the highest in our country. So for me, it's a daily reality that there are the haves and the have-nots, and this is not sustainable. Between 1 and 2 billion people don't have access to the kind of things that we take for granted, and that's, as we increase our population, is something it's going to become an increasing problem, and it already is. Conflict resulting from climate change, resulting from poverty, etc., is not going to get better in the current trajectory. However, I'm hopeful and positive that we will be able to solve this problem. And I think surviving in extreme and resource-constrained environments is part of the demonstration that we hope to achieve in Antarctica. So during 2021, we'll spend the winter in Antarctica. We'll attempt not to burn any diesel. We're going to bring diesel, but we'll attempt not to burn any diesel. We'll rely on solar power while the sun is shining. We'll switch to wind turbines in the winter. We'll have hydrogen fuel cells, possibly cycling through our wastewater management system. We'll grow food in indoor units like shipping containers, and we'll have a communication system that connects to satellites in the case that the network goes down. So redundancy is key and efficiency is key. And I think if we can demonstrate part 1, Antarctica, part 2, a desert, a toxic mining site in a desert, part 3, under the ocean. I think by then, and this is our company Off-World Ventures, by then I think we'll be able to consult for any kind of extreme environment. So we don't need to get to space to get good at living in space. There's plenty of opportunities here on Earth that both contribute to the alleviation of poverty and also equip us for living in even more extreme environments on the Moon and on Mars and beyond. And it's about the integration of existing technologies more than building a quantum computer to solve these problems.
Okay. So lots of benefits to look very, very far ahead. Are there also dangers to be considered when we look so far, or?
I don't know. I think.
Or is it only positive?
I'm pretty positive. I'm a glass half full person.
It's almost empty, but it's half full for you. Okay.
I think there are, as we've talked about already, there are significant problems affecting us today. But I think all of those problems are also opportunities. And there are lots of startup companies and lots of big companies as well looking at those problems and saying, okay, we can move into that space and we can do something to make it better.
Okay, perfect. Well, I want to thank you, the people around the table, for this conversation.
Thanks,
and
Hannah.
I will give the word to Timo. He's still writing, yes, to do a wrap-up. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. We had a wonderful visit from some people that clearly live in the future. We talked about a lot. I'm going to attempt to summarize it. So first lesson for me was from Vincent and from Adriana, talking about learning from failure and perseverance. So 30 years of working to achieve an outcome, while people thought you were crazy. Same thing with talking about SpaceX. It was impossible to get the boosters to land. So first they call you crazy, then they copy you and call you up and desperately want to partner with you. So as you go on your innovation projects, remember there's going to be some people that are always going to be negative. So push them to one side. In the words of Tom, just do it, screw the process.
Yeah. I'm Irish, I can get away with that.
Next topic is the big move from molecules to electrons. both Tom and Vincent have promised that next week you'll be able to go on a commercial flight powered by solar electricity, apparently. I was a little bit worried about your statement, though. You said it's important to partner with people that have no idea what they're doing. I wasn't quite sure if that was a lesson to be learned. But interesting, though, work with people that are outside your typical group. Diversity is key for innovation. Then we talked about the big opportunities in healthcare, in utilities, in transportation, in agriculture, in education. Isn't it easier just to talk about the industries where there isn't a massive opportunity for new use of technology? Then I thought I liked that story of Volkswagen. Dieselgate, never let a good crisis go to waste. Often when something goes massively wrong, that's a great opportunity to change people's mindset. You're starting from somewhere where people have nothing to lose. If you're going to go on holiday, says Adriana, the one thing you have to pack is a 3D printer. I don't know if they do bikinis yet, but that's one thing to look forward to. And what is the key technology? I like this, was the key technology is people, is ideas. It's taking what we already have today and putting it together and turning that into effective innovation. I have tried one of those Beyond Burgers. Fantastic, so I thoroughly recommend it, anybody who gets the opportunity. And to finish up, it really is about these win-win-win opportunities. We've heard how we can use these technologies to make businesses more efficient, which means better profits, but at the same time, it's sustainable, it's better for the planet, it's better for the people involved. We really do believe that the best-run companies can help the world run better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Timo. And we have some music.